Hi friends, I'm Abby and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about some books that I think deserve more love and hype, and that everybody should be reading these books because I love them and I think you will too. And I think everybody should be reading them, loving them, talking about them. So this is the first part in like a little series that I'm going to be doing. So I've got this part which is books I think deserve more hype and love. I have books I think are overhyped and people don't need to talk about them as much. Why do you love these? I have hyped books that I think are worth the hype and they deserve all the love that they get. And then I have popular books that I have no interest in. So a little like 4-part series on some recommendations and some thoughts, and I'm going to try and intersperse the positive and unpopular opinions, positive and negative opinions. As the parts come out, I will link them in the different videos. So if you're interested in following along in this little series, then there we go. The book and the sort of series that prompted this video, or like the one that I thought of first for this one, was The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. And I do feel like this is getting a little bit of hype right now, and a few more people are reading it, such as myself. I liked this one, but I didn't love it. But I'm currently reading the second book and I'm really liking that. I'm about 400 pages in as of filming this, and I'm really liking the second book, like such a step up. This is a historical fantasy set in the kingdom of Dara, which is based on like a medieval China, I would say, an older China. I'm not too sure exactly on the dynasty or the era exactly, but it is very real to history. You are following the consequences of the death of the emperor and the political ramifications that this has on the country and the different factions and areas within the country as multiple people try to take control. The two main characters that you're following are Kuni Garu and Mata Zindu. I'm not too sure on my exact pronunciations of these people, but those are the two characters that you follow, and you follow them and their dynamic as it shifts through these political tensions. And the second book is currently so good, so political. I'm feeling much closer to the characters in the second book compared to this one. This feels like a very historical like prologue to the start of the series. And the fourth and final book in this series is coming out later on in June, so it's the perfect time to get on board with this. There are currently 3 books out. And yeah, the 4th one coming out at the end of the month. They're all quite long, so me saying it's the perfect time to get in on this series, it may take you some time to actually read them all because they're all, this one's the shortest at like 650 pages, and then like book 2, the one I'm currently reading, is like 850 pages, so quite chunky. But maybe if you're a really quick reader, you could read them in time for the 4th book's release, but I don't think I'm going to have caught up in time for the 4th book's release. Additionally, some of these I feel like are underhyped from what I'm watching, and like sometimes I feel as though there are different like levels of hype. There's like booktube hype and the people that I'm watching, and like what my friends are reading, and like if all my friends are reading a certain book, I will feel like it's quite hyped because everyone that I am interacting with is reading that book, and then actually I'll go on to Goodreads and it's not that hyped. I think this happened with the Greenbone saga by Fonda Lee. Like I thought that had a lot of hype and a lot of people were talking about it. And I mean, there were quite a few people talking about it last year as the 3rd book was released, but actually it doesn't have that many ratings on Goodreads, and so obviously not that many people were reading it when you compare it to something like Sarah J Maas, who was really big across a lot of book platforms, whether that's YouTube or like YouTube, BookTok, Bookstagram. Like some people seem to have like a little wave of hype in my corner of the Book2Net, and some people seem to have hype like all over the Book2Net. Another one that I think deserves a bit more love is The Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick. This is a trilogy and it's actually written by a author duo, which is Alice Helms and Marie Brennan. And I really have loved the 2 books that are currently published in this trilogy, The Mask of Mirrors and The Liar's Knot, and I'm really anticipating the 3rd and final book, which hopefully is going to come out soon. And this is like a Venetian inspired fantasy story, and you're following this con artist. My hay fever is not doing very well today. So you're following this con artist Rin as she infiltrates the ruling families within this city, and actually the family that she chooses to infiltrate is not doing so well and is quite down on their luck, and so she's infiltrating for money and for esteem, and lo and behold, the family that she's chosen is running out of money. And you follow her and her infiltration, you follow some other characters. There's some really interesting magic systems within this world. There's a couple of magic systems here, and there's like a focus on tarot cards, on dreams. So I definitely recommend it if you enjoy quite a complex magic system. I feel like there is a lot to like unpack within this series. I really enjoyed these on my first time read, but I feel like I could get even more on a second time read because there's just so much going on with the politics. And like some of the scenes, like especially towards the middle of the book, I was like, you know, you're completely compelled to keep reading because you just can't stop turning the pages. So I would definitely recommend it if you're after like an epic fantasy. So then if you're after a sci-fi, I think Winter's Orbit is really underrated, underloved. It came out last year in 2021 and I saw a few people reading this, but I don't feel as though I saw enough people to really like hype it. And I really enjoyed this. I think if you enjoy like a fantasy romance, then you'll probably enjoy this as it's a sci-fi romance. It's not too like daunting if you have not read sci-fi because a lot of the focus is on the romance. And actually that was my favourite part of it, that I really liked the romance between our two main characters within this, that they were just so cute. The sci-fi, I mean, there was some sci-fi, they're obviously not on our planet, and there is some technological advancements, but there is also like a murder mystery plot because of our two characters, one of them was previously married and his husband has been murdered or is dead, and so he is now being proposed to his previous husband's cousin. And I just really love seeing the dynamic and seeing their relationship grow and them also trying to figure out exactly what happened to the previous husband. I would definitely recommend this, especially if you're after sort of a lighter sci-fi. It's a standalone, and if you're not used to reading sci-fi, it's quite good because you do have the strong romantic plotline within this. Another 2021 release that I think has been slightly mismarketed is The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reid. This is a standalone again, so you don't have a series that you are locked into. And this, I would describe it as a grimdark fantasy romance because it is dark and it's a fantasy, historical as well, and there is a strong romantic subplot. So I think you need to know that going in, that it's not a traditional like fantasy romance. And I wouldn't say like there is a strong romance to it, but it doesn't like take over from the other elements of the book. And it is definitely grimdark. So if you are not used to reading grimdark, then this might not be the book for you because there are some very graphic scenes in here. I was a bit shocked going into it because I was not prepared for it. I was not prepared for some of the scenes. I was like, what is going on here? Especially towards the beginning of the book. I think they were worse at the beginning. And then there was also like a lot of religious aspects to this, and how religion plays a part. So I think you need to have those expectations going in, but knowing that, I really liked this. Once I got used to that, I started to really like this. I liked our two characters and the magic within this world. Yeah, so our main character Avik is from a pagan village, and every so often the woodsmen come and take one of the pagans as like a sacrifice and take her back to their city. And it is a lot of like the tensions between the religions, and then you follow a main character Avik, and she is taken by these woodsmen, and then things go a little bit wrong on their journey. That's like the beginning of the book. I really like this and would definitely recommend it, but I think you need the right expectations going into this. One, I'm not too sure if this has like some hype outside of BookTube or where I watch things, but Stories of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang. This is a short story collection. I know he has a couple. I've only read this one. I haven't read Exhalation, which is another one of his. This one does have Stories of Your Life and Others is the inspiration behind the film Arrival, which I have not seen. So it does like have some hype and some, obviously people are reading it. But I don't feel like I've heard that many people talk about this. And I really like this as like a thought experiment collection. Each story stands alone. They're all individual stories, but they're all so interesting. Like, the themes that are explored within each story just get your mind thinking. You're like, I've never thought about this, but that's really bizarre. Okay. So like the first one is on like the Tower of Babel and like the construction of the Tower of Babel. There's like one here about gods and like the power of gods, and if gods are real and the belief in them, and belief in like angels and whether people do good or bad. story of your life is about like an alien, if aliens came to Earth, like how we would communicate with them, and the language that we would use to communicate with aliens. So there's lots of like, I just really liked it. There's like lots of just, a lot of them are more like thought experiments that get you thinking, that you read the story and then you'll keep thinking about it long after you've finished the story, and you'll be like, that is such an interesting premise when you think about it, when you actually like start to pick it apart. Not that you need to pick it apart, but my brain would keep thinking about these stories long after I finished reading them. So I definitely recommend it if you're after more like if you're after more of a thematic exploration of our world and different sci-fi stories. One that I read a little bit more recently is Daughter of the Forest by Juliet Maria. I've now actually finished the original trilogy of Daughter of the Forest, which is the Seven Waters trilogy. There is now 6 books in this series, and I definitely do plan to continue on. Daughter of the Forest is currently my favourite still in the series, and I love this. This one does pretty much stand alone, so you don't have to feel committed to a 6-book series. You can just read this one. And in this, you're following our main character Saoirse and her family in rural Ireland in the medieval ages. The start of this is a retelling of the 6 swans, and I'd say like the first 100 pages are quite slow as you get used to the characters, and as well there's a lot of exposition in the beginning, but it really like helps you connect to the characters. It really builds your like connection to them. Like I love Saoirse and her family, and you can really see her love for her brothers and her place in this family. And the 6 swans is this retelling where her brothers are cursed to be swans, and it is Saoirse's journey to try and save them and the people that she meets along the way. I've described this, there is like a romance in this, which I loved the romance in this, but I really just loved the family relationships and seeing like Saoirse and her family, and the writing style in this is just beautiful. Like I really loved the way that this was written and seeing these characters interact, and it was so beautifully written. It was just sort of quite a magical experience. I'd say it's a book that I was so swept up in this world with these characters and their lives and their story. For me, this is the best book so far. Yeah, this is the best book that I've read in the series so far, that it does have a certain magic which book 2 and 3 haven't had, despite that I've really enjoyed books 2 and 3 as well. They just haven't quite lived up to the same level as this one in the way that I connected to this story. Another book that I found quite magical in the way that I was just swept up in the story, I found the writing style just so evocative, and that I was swept away. I was really like swept away by the language and the way that this was written, and that was Midnight in Everwood, which is a Nutcracker retelling by M.A. Kuzniar. And I just was like, I was transported to this. This, you are following a main character, Marietta, and she dreams of being a ballerina, but her family are against that. They want her to take her place in society, and it's set in the 1900s in Nottingham. They get a new neighbour who is a designer constructor of toys, and at some point Marietta gets sucked into the world of Everwood and the world of the Nutcracker, and I was so there for it. Like I think the first little bit I was like wondering where it was going to go. I mean, I know the rough story of the Nutcracker, but the second half, I just whizzed through it. I could not put the book down. I mean, I know that this is like a Christmassy book, but I read it in like September and I was away in Greece and it was really hot, and I was still like sucked into this world and this colder world, despite being in a very warm setting, that I was just transported there. It was so vivid, the descriptions. I would say, although this is marketed as adult, I would say it leans more YA, and that it does lean younger, that if you traditionally read more epic adult fantasy, then I don't think this will appeal to you. Whereas if you do read more YA books, then I think this would be a good book for you to read, just so that it gets into the right hands. I think it's one of those books where, and I think there's been quite a few of them where they've been sold as adults, but they actually read more YA. And then one that is definitely adult, very much definitely adult. So if you are after like the epic adult fantasy, then I would go for the Forgetting Moon by Brian Lee Duffy. And I don't know why this is so underhyped. Why are people not reading this? Like, why have people not been reading this? Because this is so good, especially, yeah, if you like epic adult grimdark fantasy. And although in this one there's like one scene that's grimdark, in book 2 it's like the whole thing is just grim. This is epic adult fantasy at its best. So if you like John Gwynne, I would say you should read this, although I think the writing style is a little bit different, but some of the themes are similar between the two of them. It takes a lot of themes that we know and love in fantasy and then it twists them. So it has religion and prophecy and castles, secret passageways, assassins, the chosen one, like a lost heir, like different warring nations. You have different magic creatures, you have artifacts, you have so many things within this that just make up like an epic fantasy that I love. I love the camaraderie between our characters. A lot of them are not likable, but somehow I don't really care that they're not likable. I still quite like them. I think they're all like really interesting characters to follow, that they have so much personality. It is multiple perspectives, so you do get to follow them and their journeys and their growth. And there's just a lot of twists. There's a lot of characters that I do not trust. And I'm waiting to see how the third book wraps up, because I want to know who I hopefully could trust and who I'm not going to be able to trust, and where it's all headed. Because it feels like everything's just very dark at the moment, and I don't know why people you need to read this. I have a whole discussion on this first book up on my channel, which I can link, so I would definitely recommend this. If you need like an epic adult fantasy in your life, then I think you should read this. And the third book should be coming out later on this year, so it's the perfect time to get on board with this. There are some underhyped book recommendations that I have for you. Let me know if you've read any of these, if you would recommend them as well, if you enjoyed any of these books. If you are now going to pick any of these books up because now you're interested in reading them, let me know. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my future videos. Bye!